Last summer, I pulled 38 cucumbers off 2 plants in a 4x8 bed, and almost none of them were bitter. The summer before that, half my harvest tasted like I'd salted them with disappointment. The only thing I changed was how I watered. Here's the thing. Most folks water their cucumbers the same way they water everything else, and that one habit is quietly shrinking your harvest and turning your fruit bitter without you ever knowing why. I'm going to walk you through exactly how I fixed it, step by step. And stick around to the end, because I'll share the one thing I bury next to every cucumber plant that keeps the water doing its job even on a 100-degree Sacramento afternoon. Those 38 cucumbers came off 2 plants in my little 4x8 raised bed, the one I built from reclaimed cedar fence boards out back here in Sacramento. The summer before, that same bed gave me a harvest where half the fruit was bitter. Same variety, same soil, same Zone 9B heat that climbs past 100 degrees most July afternoons. The only thing I changed was how I watered. Here's the thing. Most folks give their cucumbers a quick splash every day the same way they'd water a houseplant. That little sprinkle only wets the top inch of soil, and the root zone underneath swings from bone dry to soaked and back again. Cucumbers are almost all water, and when the moisture keeps yo-yoing like that, the plant gets stressed and starts making a compound called cucurbitacin. That's the bitterness. It's not your variety, it's not bad luck, it's the watering. The good news is the fix is simple, and it costs you almost nothing. I'm going to walk you through it in 5 steps, and each one builds on the last. By the end, your cucumbers will be drinking steady, your roots will be reaching deep, and the bitterness disappears. And stick around to the end, because I'll share the one thing I bury next to every cucumber plant that keeps the water doing its job, even on a 100-degree Sacramento afternoon. Let's get into it. Step 1. Water deep, not often. This is the one that changed everything for me. Instead of a little splash every day, I give my cucumbers a long, slow soak 2 or 3 times a week. The target is about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week, and I want that water to sink down 6 to 8 inches into the soil. That's where the real roots live. When I water deep like this, the roots chase the moisture downward, and a deep root system is a root system that doesn't panic the second the surface dries out. Here's how I check it. After I water, I'll push a trowel or a long screwdriver down into the bed. If it slides in easy to about 6 inches, I'm good. If it stops short at 2 inches, I haven't watered deep enough. And I go again. The failure mode here is the daily sprinkle. A daily sprinkle keeps all the roots crowded up near the surface, and in my Sacramento bed, that top inch of soil can hit 90 degrees by noon. Roots cooking near the surface are stressed roots, and stressed roots make bitter cucumbers. Do this one right, and you've already done the heaviest lifting. Deeper roots, steadier plant, and a foundation that holds up when the heat comes. Step 2. Water at the base, never overhead. I learned this the slow way. For years, I'd stand there with the hose and just shower the whole plant, leaves and all, because it felt like I was being generous. What I was actually doing was setting my plants up for powdery mildew. Cucumbers hate wet leaves, so now I water at soil level, right at the base of the plant, using a watering can with a fine rose head or a hose set low and slow on the ground. I aim the water at the dirt, not the foliage. The drops go straight down to the root zone where they belong, and the leaves stay dry. The failure here is overhead watering, especially the kind that leaves droplets sitting on the leaves. Wet foliage in warm, still air is an open invitation for that white, powdery fungus, and once it takes hold, it spreads across the whole plant and quietly shrinks your harvest leaf by leaf. Gloria taught me this on her San Francisco balcony years ago. She'd water her containers right at the soil line, slow and patient, never splashing a single leaf, and her plants never had a speck of mildew on them. Do this right, and you get clean, dry, healthy leaves doing their job, and water going exactly where it counts. Step 3. Be ruthlessly consistent. This is the step that separates sweet cucumbers from disappointing ones, and it's the one most folks skip. Cucumbers swing bitter when the soil yo-yos from dry to wet and back again. That moisture stress is what triggers the bitterness compound I mentioned. So the goal is steady. Not soaking wet, not bone dry, just evenly moist all the time. The way I keep tabs on it is something I do almost without thinking now. I stick my finger 2 knuckles deep into the soil about 2 inches down, right next to the plant. If it's dry at that depth, I water. If it's still damp, I wait. That 2-knuckle finger test has saved me more harvests than any gadget I've ever bought. In the peak of a Sacramento summer, when we're running a string of 100-degree days, that usually means watering every other morning on a fixed schedule. I don't wait until the plant looks thirsty and wilted. By then, the damage is already done. The failure mode here is the one that wrecked my harvest 2 summers ago. I let a heat wave roll through. The bed dried out hard for 3 or 4 days, and then I panicked and flooded it. That dry to flood swing is exactly what salted half my cucumbers with that bitter taste. Now I never let it happen. Steady soil, checked with my own finger, on a schedule I actually keep. Do this right, and your soil stays even, your plant stays calm, and the bitterness never gets a foothold. Step 4. Mulch to lock the moisture in. Everything you just did in the first 3 steps, mulch is what protects it. I lay down 2 to 3 inches of straw or shredded leaves over the entire root zone, right on top of the soil around the base of each plant. That layer does 2 jobs at once. It slows down evaporation so the water you put in actually stays in the ground instead of steaming off, and it drops the soil temperature underneath by a noticeable amount. My native Sacramento dirt is a clay loam, and bare clay loam under 100-degree sun bakes hard and cracks and dries out within hours. I've watched it happen. I'd water a bare bed in the morning, and by mid-afternoon the surface was crusted and pulling away from the edges. The failure mode is leaving that soil bare and exposed. Bare soil in Central Valley heat is fighting you all day long, wicking moisture up and out faster than you can replace it. With a few inches of straw over the top, I can water less often, and the soil underneath stays cool and damp even on the worst afternoons. A bale of straw costs me a few dollars and covers both my 4x8 beds with some to spare, and shredded leaves I get for free in the fall. Do this right, and you've got a cooler bed, slower evaporation, and soil that holds what you give it. Step 5. Water in the morning. Timing matters more than people think. I water between 6 and 8 in the morning before the heat really climbs. The reason is simple. I want the plant fully hydrated and topped off before the afternoon sun starts pulling moisture out of every leaf. A cucumber plant that's drinking steady at 7 a.m. is a plant that can stand up to a 100-degree afternoon without going into stress mode. My dad taught me this when I was a kid back in Ohio, standing in the backyard with the hose at sunrise. He always said you water in the morning so the plant has a full tank before the day asks anything of it. I didn't understand it then, but it stuck. The failure mode is evening watering. I know it feels logical, cooling the plant down at the end of a hot day, but it backfires 2 ways. Watering at night leaves the foliage damp through the cool overnight hours, and that's mildew weather all over again. And it leaves the roots gasping by the middle of the next afternoon because the morning hydration window was missed. Morning water gets the plant ahead of the heat instead of behind it. Do this right, and your cucumbers go into the hottest part of the day already full, already steady, ready to keep setting fruit instead of just surviving. Those 5 steps are the whole method, and none of them cost more than a few dollars. Deep soaks instead of daily sprinkles. Water at the base, not over the top. Steady moisture checked with your own finger, a few inches of mulch. And morning timing. That's it. That's the entire difference between the summer I pulled 38 cucumbers off 2 plants and the summer before it where half of them tasted like punishment. I didn't change my variety, I didn't change my soil, I didn't buy a single new tool. I changed how the water reached the roots, and the plants did the rest. Now, before I share the thing I bury next to every plant, I want to walk you through the mistakes I see most often, because knowing what not to do is half the battle. But first, let me cover one more thing about reading your own plants, because once you can see what they're telling you, this whole thing gets a lot easier. Now, if what I'm showing you today is making sense, and you're starting to realize you've been stressing your plants without ever knowing it, I want to point you somewhere. I wrote a book called The 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol, and Chapter 10 is all about troubleshooting. It lays out the signs of overwatering right next to the signs of underwatering side by side, so you can look at a droopy plant and actually read what it's telling you instead of guessing. That's the whole skill here, and you don't need a big budget to learn it. It's $17 over at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're watching on your TV right now, go ahead and grab your phone and point it at the QR code on screen. Take your time, no rush, I'll be right here. If you're on your phone or laptop, the link is down in the description. All right, let's keep going. The first mistake I see most is the daily light sprinkle. Folks walk out with the hose, give the bed a quick splash every morning, and feel like they did their job. But that splash only wets the top inch, which keeps the roots shallow and stressed and quietly shrinks your yield all season. The fix is fewer, deeper soaks that drive those roots down where it's cool. The second mistake is the one that bit me hardest in my bitter summer. You let the plants go bone dry during a heat wave because you got busy, then you panic and flood them. That swing from dry to soaked is the single biggest bitterness trigger there is, and it can ruin a whole flush of fruit in a few days. Keep the soil steady, check it with your 2-knuckle finger test, and never let it ride that roller coaster. The third mistake is watering overhead in the evening. Wet leaves sitting overnight are an open invitation to powdery mildew, and that white dusty coating quietly cuts your harvest week by week without any drama. The fix is simple. Water at the base in the morning and let the sun keep the foliage dry. 3 mistakes, 3 fixes, and every one of them I learned by getting it wrong first. Now here's the thing I promised at the very start. I told you I'd share the one thing I bury next to every cucumber plant that keeps the water working even on a 100-degree Sacramento afternoon. It's an unglazed terracotta pot, the cheap clay kind, what folks call anola. Here's exactly what I do. I take a 1-gallon unglazed clay pot, plug the drainage hole at the bottom with a cork, and bury it up to its neck about 6 to 8 inches from the base of each plant. Then, I fill it with water and cap it with a saucer or a flat stone so it doesn't evaporate off the top. I refill it every 2 to 3 days. In my 4x8 bed, I run 2 or 3 of them. Here's why it works, and it's the prettiest trick in my whole garden. The clay is porous, so the dry soil around it slowly pulls water straight through the walls at exactly the rate the roots need it. The soil never floods, never goes bone dry. It just stays evenly damp down at the root zone, even when it's 100 degrees out. That steady moisture is what stops the plant from ever triggering that bitter compound. And you don't need to buy a fancy one. A chipped terracotta pot you already own works perfectly, a few dollars or free from the recycling pile. Before I let you go, I want to mention one more thing. Those cucumbers I keep talking about are growing in a small 4x8 raised bed. And if a tight little footprint like that is all you've got, you can still grow a lot of food. Chapter 7 of the book, the Scaling Up chapter, walks through raised bed basics and growing vertically up a trellis, which is exactly how you pull more cucumbers out of a small space. It's got illustrated diagrams showing the setups so you can see it laid out. It's the guide I wish I'd had when I was killing tomatoes in my Portland apartment. You'll find it at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're on the big screen, scan that QR code with your phone now. Go ahead and pull it up, I'll give you a second. And if you're on your phone already, the link is waiting in the description. So that's how I went from a half-bitter mess to 38 sweet cucumbers off 2 plants, and the only thing I changed was how the water reached the roots. If you want more little fixes like this is the kind of thing I do here every week. Try one change this week, just the deep morning watering, and see what your plants do. Drop a note in the comments and let me know how it goes. I read them all. And if you want to go deeper, look at mulching next, because that's the other half of keeping your soil steady in the heat. Until next time, keep growing your own food, my friend.